Shakti here. So apologies for turning up a little bit later than I said. I was caught up with something else and didn't want to rush. I don't rush these days. I take my time, even if that means showing up late sometimes. So welcome to this live on the theme of sovereignty. And it's kind of a bonus transmission following on from the 3 lives that I did around the Holy Trinity of love, sanctity, and surrender. So those 3 lives you'll find here in the group or on YouTube. And it'd be great if you watch them in sequence because they do all connect. And that series of love, sanctity, and surrender emerged as I've been preparing for my upcoming retreat, which is this weekend actually, June 18th to the 19th, Sovereign Sexual Woman. So after I'd done those lives, they do feel complete unto themselves as a transmission about the fundamental keys to a heightened or expanded sexual spiritual experience. That's come both from my own experience, as a woman, as a lover, but also as a priestess of love and sacred sexuality, as someone trained in facilitating sexual awakening for women. Those were the 3 keys. And after I'd completed, it then suddenly occurred to me, there's a piece missing here. And of course, it wasn't by design, but it just suddenly occurred to me the missing piece is, of course, sovereignty. And sovereignty is something that actually was very much missing for me through most of my early years, through most of my early sexual experience. And you could actually say that the reason I became a teacher of sacred sexuality, the reason I became a priestess of love and sacred sexuality, the reason I even, found my way onto this path is because of an absence of sovereignty. And actually not only in this arena of sexuality and relating, but actually more broadly, an absence of sovereignty as a woman and an absence of sovereignty as a human being. The reason for that being that, as I feel I keep saying, the society and culture that we're all born into, the dominant narratives that we all inherit, kind of program us to be disempowered within a system that is not empowering to men and women. But I'm focusing on women here, so it's not empowering, celebrating, honoring women. And your body, your sexuality, your emotions, your feminine qualities are actually key to your sovereignty and to your empowerment. So the narratives that we inherit are kind of teaching us the very opposite of that. And I'm no exception. And so in a way, that's, as I say, why I came upon and was drawn to, my soul was called to this path. My personal circumstances called me to this path because I had to find understanding, I had to find meaning, I had to find healing for myself. But and so then, in my own personal story, which I share very freely because I hope to illuminate for you where this may also be playing out in your own life, because the trouble is it's so pervasive and so much a part of our everyday that we don't see it. We don't see it. In that beautiful quote that I took from the book I'm reading right now, it's called Healing Sex, A Mind-Body Approach to Healing Sexual Trauma by Stacey Haynes. Haven't got very far, but it's a great book. There's a great quote that she says there in the opening chapters. Our unexamined assumptions have unintended consequences. Let me say that again. Our unexamined assumptions have unintended consequences. So the beliefs, the stories, the narratives, the wounds, the conditioning, the programs that you have inherited from your family, from your society, from your culture, from your religion, from your school, from your peer group, wherever that is unconscious, wherever you have not examined, wherever you are just acting without awareness, then you're having unintended consequences, not just for yourself, but for others. And actually, you're just perpetuating that narrative and that storyline and that belief system. It's like, again, this is a quote that she has used in her book, Stacey Haynes, like trying to see your conditioning can be like trying to see water when you're a fish. So it's like so much like the air you breathe, the media you watch, the TV you watch, the books you've read, the fairy tales your parents tell you, the conversations you hear your parents and the adults around you having, the way you see them behaving, what you read in the newspapers. You know, it's so much what's around you that you don't realize it is just a construct. It isn't the truth, right? So when we act in that way, it's not like, and I want to really highlight this because I also get that there can be so much shame and guilt and self-blame and self-judgment that can come up when we begin to explore this topic. It's not like I or you or anyone is deliberately going around being mean, being nasty, hurting other people, betraying other people, right? Most people are not deliberately going around being mean to others. And of course, you know, I've had these experiences of betrayal, of rejection, of abandonment by men multiple times, and it really fucking hurts. But what I didn't see is how I had betrayed, I had lied, I had rejected, and I had abandoned not just others, but myself. So it's not like we're deliberately being cruel. It's not like we're deliberately being mean most of the time, though there are, you know, some people who are, but most people are not. It's just that we're acting and thinking unconsciously towards ourselves, about ourselves, and towards and about others, because we're so heavily influenced by social and cultural and family norms that contain a particular belief system, right? That we adopt as normal. So we just adopt these norms as normal without question. And this can be things like misogyny, it can be things like sexism, it can be things like racism, right? So we can adopt these belief systems as normal, as the norm. We just think it's the norm. We don't question it, even when that belief system is actually limiting us, hurting us, detrimental to us or to others, right? Look at the way so many belief systems have just been perpetuated without question for so many years when they are oppressing others, hurting others, objectifying others, demeaning others, disempowering others. And we're a part of that system. We have been a part of that system. And, you know, the book that I often refer to by Valerie Ryan, and I've been calling her Valerie Klein, like I've had a bit of a brain thing. It's Valerie Ryan, not Klein. And her book, Patriarchy, Stress, Disorder, PSD. She highlights there very clearly how every woman has experienced multiple repetitive micro-traumas and is born into a world where she is inherently traumatized, if you take trauma to be in the meaning that she uses it, because the belief system of patriarchy is that the feminine is less than. Simply put, the feminine is less than, and everything that's then associated with being a woman and being a female is less than. We consider ourselves less than, not good enough, right from the get-go, because it's just like the water that we're swimming in, right? And it goes unquestioned. So again, another example, you know, I grew up at a time where from the age of 11 or 12, I would be wolf whistled, catcalled, have men call out comments to me about my body, my appearance, when I walk past them, where it was normal to for there to be a page 3 girl on in the Sun newspaper, and for men to be reading that openly in front of other women on the bus. For even my father would eye up other women in my presence and you know, make comments about them in my presence. Now, you can see now, perhaps because attitudes have changed, but that attitude of misogyny and objectification and the privileging of the male gaze and male desire was completely unquestioned. Women weren't going around saying, oh, this is disgusting, how dare they? They would laugh and go along with it. They were upholding this system through their own immersion in it, and just laugh and say, oh, that's just what men are like, right? But just consider the impact that has on the emergent female psyche and sexuality when her water that she's swimming in is the water of objectification, of sexualization, of your value is about how your body looks. Your value is in how beautiful you are based on your conforming to an externally defined standard. If you don't match up to this standard, you're not worthy, you're not valuable, you're not good enough. Eating disorders. Women around me, girls at school, had eating disorders because they wanted to be thinner, because they thought their value was in being thin. They didn't realize that's got nothing to do with their value, because their mothers, the women around them, society around them wasn't modeling that. Conditioned behavior teaches us these things, right? And so the process of sexual and spiritual awakening is really about coming to see. It's like we slowly remove this blindness that's been making us unconscious, and we begin to see, oh my fucking God, this isn't the truth. It's a construct. This isn't true. It's a belief. This isn't true. This is a wounding passed down from my family through the ancestors onto me. This isn't who I am. Who I am is God. Who I am is Goddess. Who I am is infinite. What I am, I can choose to be anything. I don't have to live up to these expectations. I don't have to live by these norms. I'm free. That's what the whole process of sexual and spiritual awakening is about, beginning to see these beliefs and understand our wounds and see where we've been conditioned, and slowly heal and slowly release and slowly deprogram and slowly reveal our true soul essence that we were born to be and born to express into the world, right? We don't care what others think. We're not here to impress others. We're not here to win approval. We're not here to manipulate with our body and our sexuality. It's all conditioned. So we get to see our adaptations. We get to see our survival mechanisms that were programmed in childhood. So it's both very personal and it's both very general and political, actually. So the personal and the political, they're one and the same. There is this water that we've been swimming in, all these beliefs, all these narratives, all these dogmas, all these norms that we think are normal, right? And then there's our very particular, unique, individual experience that we have. Our parents, our caregivers, our siblings, our immediate family, our immediate education system, our immediate social sphere. That's what creates how we begin to be and how we begin to behave as a woman, particularly whatever happens around the time of menarche, when we begin to bleed. It's such a formative time That's stepping into womanhood. What's going on around you at menarche is fundamental in programming your sexuality, right? So what was your experience when you began to bleed? Were you honored? Were you celebrated? Were you initiated? Did you have women modeling for you what it is to be a sovereign woman, to be a sovereign sexual woman? Was that modeled for you? I bet it wasn't for most people, right? And then there are all these survival mechanisms, these adaptations that you learn to survive, because when you're a child, you want to be loved. You need to be loved to survive. You need food, you need shelter, right? So we learn very early on, I have to do this to fit into the family. I have to do this to be loved. I have to do this to be accepted. And then we create the false self. She who has learned to adapt a certain way, to fit in, to survive, to get love, even if that's not really love, you know. So the process of sexual and spiritual awakening is a process of making the unconscious conscious. So we begin to slowly remember who and what we truly are. We are the divine. We begin to take responsibility. We stop blaming everybody else. We are no longer victims. And we reclaim our authentic power. Not the learned power dynamics, not the shadow behaviors that we learned as children to manipulate. Again, I'm not casting shame or judgment on anyone, because I have had that experience. You have had that experience. We all have. It's like, let's be compassionate with ourselves. These shadow behaviors, these shadow power dynamics come about because we haven't grown up in an environment of unconditional love and awareness. Shadow power dynamics can be, for example, people pleasing. That's one of mine. People pleasing. What's that got to do with power? It's a way of controlling. It's a shadow form of trying to have control over the situation. Yes, there's overt ways of trying to control others, you know, by telling them what to do, by trying to control overtly, by bullying, by nagging, by demanding, by insisting, by forcing, by even more extreme means. But overtly, people pleasing is also a shadow power dynamic. We don't express our truth, we agree, we make nice, we're afraid of rejection. That's also a power dynamic. Of course, it's a disempowered power dynamic, but it is about power. So, yeah, that kind of leads me on to, and I guess I've kind of already referred to it a little bit, the family dynamic that I grew up with. And I think this is quite common for my generation. But of course, this power dynamic is everywhere. So, you know, the victim, perpetrator, rescuer triangle, right? So we have the victim, we have the perpetrator, and we have the rescuer. This is a very, very common power dynamic in families, in social structures, everywhere. And for women, oftentimes the shadow expression is victim. It's not my fault, poor me, he did this to me, that happened to me. It's like not taking responsibility. It's feeling sorry for yourself. It's being the victim. My mum was a classic victim. She was depressed and disempowered as long as I can remember. You know, that's what she modeled. She modeled for me the victim and the martyr. My father was the bully and the tyrant, the perpetrator, right? Classic. What was I? The rescuer. Classic, right? So in that family dynamic, my needs were not considered important. Both of my parents had somewhat narcissistic tendencies. My father overt, my mother covert. So they were very self-centered in different ways. So my value in that family unit was the only way I could actually get some kind of connection or attention was by listening to them. So I would listen to my mum moaning and going on about how awful my dad was. I would listen to my dad going on about how awful my mum was. So my worth came from being a good listener and from empathizing with them. My needs were not seen, were not considered, were not important. I was not seen, I was not considered, I was not important. The love I was given was conditional. You know, get good grades, come first, win your tennis match, oh well done. Don't get the grades, lose your tennis match, fail at something. You know, my worth also in that family unit was about how I looked. So if I didn't look what they thought was attractive, I would be judged. So, you know, that was the programming, that was the conditioning for me. What that set me up for then in love and in sex, because of course love and sex go together, relationship and sex go together, they're not separate from one another. We bring these wounds into our sexuality and into our relating, was then to make me predisposed to be vulnerable to love bombing. Because of course, when someone came in and was paying me attention and listening to me and asking me questions, I was like, oh, somebody's actually listening to me. Somebody's actually paying me attention. Wow, I wasn't used to it. And I fell for it. Not realizing that that wasn't authentic, actually. I was so hungry for it. I didn't see the narcissistic behavior or the manipulative behavior behind that. So it made me hungry to be seen, hungry for attention, hungry to be loved, and codependent, people pleasing, because I was terrified once I had that attention of losing it. I was afraid of rejection. So this overlaid my sex life and my relating, of course. And so it is for all of us. Each of you will have your own particular story, your own particular family dynamic, your own particular social, cultural and religious dynamic that will of course be overlaid with your sexuality and your relating. The great thing is that this is actually what propelled me onto this path. So eventually the emotional pain, the suffering, the repetitive nature of this pattern, which I still wasn't aware was a pattern, is what forced me to start seeking, forced me to wake up, right? Along with, hand in hand, practices that I was then beginning to immerse myself in of embodied awareness and energy awakening. That on the one hand helped me to begin to see, and also my pain and my suffering helped me begin to see. Second, I mean, I could tell you a whole life story, but I'm not going to tell you the whole story now. It would take too long because I can give you 1,000,001 examples. But let's get to my second marriage. Had been in many ways a disempowered choice. My first pregnancy I had a traumatic birth, and that birth was traumatic. Of course, we can never know exactly what would have happened if things were otherwise, but it was because I wasn't sovereign. I wasn't owning what was happening to my body. I wasn't taking responsibility for my pregnancy. I wasn't choosing. I was so conditioned to give away my power to the medical professionals without even thinking, to listen to what the doctors and the nurses said without even thinking. And most people out in the world are. I didn't have sovereignty over my physical body. I didn't have sovereignty over that pregnancy. I just gave my power away. I thought the experts knew better. I hadn't done my research. I hadn't read about pregnancy really. Just read a little bit. I didn't have anybody in my sphere or around me who educated me or passed on feminine wisdom about the body, about childbirth, about pregnancy. Nobody. So, you know, there was a whole vacuum about this feminine wisdom in my world. I didn't know at that time that birth doulas existed. I didn't know that there was such a thing as conscious birthing or conscious parenting. I had no fucking idea. And I gave my power away to the medical professionals, and I had a traumatic birth. My vagina split. We couldn't have sex because it was painful. I didn't have the resources to communicate about that. We began to not sleep together and grow apart, and that marriage ended. 4.5 years without any sex. Fucking hell. I used to love sex. Can you imagine what that's like to go from loving sex and that being a key part of your relationship to having no sex for 4.5 years? Didn't have the communication skills, didn't have the self-awareness. Blamed my partner for quite a few things, didn't see my part in it, completely blind to my part in it. Initiated a separation, divorce. Single mum, 2 young children, no money, no friends, nothing. Trauma, wounding, created that situation. A lack of awareness, a lack of sovereignty. I had to find something. And so that's where my seeking path really began. I have this sexual desire. I love sex. But it has to be married with awareness, and it has to be married with sanctity, with spirituality. It can't just be sex unto itself for itself. I have this broken heart. I've had this pattern of, another divorce, 2 marriages. I don't want that anymore. I want a conscious relationship. I want to heal this. That's how it started, right? I had to see and I had to heal my part. And that was the beginning of my journey that took me on to become who I am today and what I do today. And it's still ongoing. These wounds, these traumas, these unconscious areas, they still play out. They're still there sometimes. It's not like it's all done. It's not like it's all done and dusted. I'm not perfect. I'm not, immaculate. I still have all of these shadows and wounds and traumas. It's just that they are more conscious. And when something else rises now, I'm more able to hold it, to see it, to acknowledge it, to welcome it, to process it, right? That's the journey. But even as I speak of that, as my own particular journey, everyone's going to have their own version of that. Until you see it, you might not see it. But when you begin to see it, you can't stop. And I know, looking back, when I was at the beginning of my journey 20 years ago, it was very, very hard for me to acknowledge my part. I couldn't see. So it's not, again, I wasn't a bad person. I wasn't trying to be nasty. I wasn't trying to be bad. I wasn't a bad person. Bless me. I just couldn't see it. And there was a big fear in me. I think I can see this now that I don't have so much now, of being wrong, which again was part of my family programming, but also part of my religious program, because the bit I forgot to mention was that I became a born-again Christian through my teenage years. And there's such a heavy indoctrination of guilt with that, and shame and sin. And, I had this longing and this yearning to be a good girl, to be loved by God, to be loved by my parents, to get it right, to be a good person, sincerely. And so I thought at the beginning of this journey that to admit that I had done something wrong, or to admit that I hadn't been honest, I was dishonest with my husband. I didn't tell him the truth. I withheld aspects of my experience. I withheld aspects of my truth. And to begin to admit that I had some responsibility was really scary and difficult for me because of this conditioning of guilt and shame. So I understand how difficult it can be to see and to own and to acknowledge. But what I also know is that it's only in that seeing, owning and acknowledging that we can liberate ourselves. that we can step into our power, that we can become liberated. And you're so welcome. So, the thing is that, as I've said in a different life somewhere else, when it comes to these norms and these constructs, I would say, and of course this is my own perspective, I totally own that, and but let's just, I'm going to say it. I would say that womanhood, what it is to be a woman, which includes, of course, your feminine body, your breasts, your belly, your bum, your vagina, your yoni, and of course that includes your sexuality. I would say perhaps these are the most conditioned areas of our being as humans. Sex is a huge taboo topic still. It's a topic still that is so overlaid with beliefs of good and bad and wrong and right and sin and shame and guilt. So of course we're going to pick that up. Here we are, beautiful women in these beautiful bodies designed for pleasure, designed for multi-orgasmicness, designed for ecstasy. And all around us this sea of programming of guilt, shame, naughty, sin, right? As I say in my book, where is it? Here it is. As I say in my book, everything you've been told is a lie. And those lies keep you separate from your power and your pleasure. They keep you disempowered. They hide what it is to be sovereign from you through all the beliefs about not good enough. All the body shame. Oh, my bum's too big, my belly's too big, my boobs are too small. Fucking load of bullshit. Your body's beautiful. It's given to you by God. Celebrate, love, and honor your beautiful body as a temple. That belief of not good enough is a program. It's not a truth. Sets you up to be disempowered because, of course, sexual pleasure comes through the body. Making love is with the body. Opening to the divine feminine and Shakti energy is through the body. Connecting to your goddess self is through the body. So, if there's any level on which you don't feel comfortable with your body, you don't feel at home in your body, you don't feel in tune with your body, you don't feel relaxed and at ease in your body, you don't feel comfortable with somebody seeing you naked, you don't feel comfortable with someone looking at your genitals, how are you going to be in your power? How are you going to be sovereign? How are you going to be open to Shakti? How are you going to be able to surrender? Right? It's a programming that keeps you disempowered and detached from your pleasure. Your body is the locus of your pleasure, the locus of your goddess self, the locus of your power, your sexuality too. So, everything you've been told is a lie. Body shame, sexual shame, repressed desire, objectification. I'm here to please you. No, fuck off. I'm here to please myself. I'm not here to look good for you. I shall dress as I like. I shall do what I want with my hair. I shall do what makeup I want for me. Not to get something, not to manipulate anyone out there. It's for me. It's because I like it. It's because I feel good. That's it. That's all is needed. It's for me. It's not for anybody else. I'm not here to please or appease or tease any man. Right? That's sovereignty. I own my desire. I know what I want. And I won't accept less. That's owning my desire. If I choose to have sex with someone, I'm going to take responsibility for my sexual health. I'm going to take responsibility for that encounter. I'm not going to blame him for manipulating him in some way and then having a go at him afterwards for what he didn't do. That's my responsibility, not his. I take responsibility. To be safe is my responsibility. To only open when I want to is my responsibility. If I'm giving myself away and then blaming him, that's not sovereign. Yes, there are unconscious men in the world, just as there are unconscious women, right? Just as many, equal. They don't know any better, just like you didn't know any better, just like I didn't know any better. We attract like for like. It's not their fault. It's our choice to make it conscious, right? So what is sovereignty? Okay, I'm going to read you a quote. This quote is also from Stacey Haynes' book, Healing Sex. It's right there in the introduction, or in the introduction. And this is, where's my glasses? It's something of a definition. It's not the full definition, I would say, but it's a pretty good start. Just seeing your comments, it can be scary. Yeah, of course it can be scary. Fucking hell, it's scary. Sometimes. But that's part of it, okay? All right. What is so threatening about a sexually empowered woman? A sexually empowered woman is a woman who is embodied, right? You can't be empowered if you're not in your body. What does it mean to be in your body? It means you're in tune, you are feeling, you are sensing, you sense every part of your body. Your body's giving you information all the time about your emotions, about your yes, about your no, about comfort, about discomfort. You have to be in your body. Patriarchal system teaches you to be disembodied and to be separate, to separate body and mind, sex and spirit. You've got to be right here. Body is key. So sexually empowered woman is a woman who is embodied, which means loving your body too, whose sexual expression is a part of herself, right? So I carry my sexual energy, I carry my sensuality with me all the time these days. That's very different to playing or trading with my sexual energy, to manipulating with my sexual energy, to being coquettish, right? To using that energy to get something, to impact someone. It's a part of me, it's part of my whole, it's part of my radiance, it's part of my vitality, but it's clearly boundaried because it's for me and it's part of who I am, but I'm not, that part of me is not shut down. So when you're with me, you can feel my warmth, you can feel my sensuality, you can feel my aliveness, but you get very clearly it's not here to hook somebody in, it's just part of my womanhood, right? And actually, I would say there aren't that many women around who really embody their sexuality and their sexual expression in that way. So, a sexually empowered woman is a woman who's embodied, whose sexual expression is a part of herself, of course, and whose sex life is self-defined. Self-defined. You take responsibility. You choose. You own your desire. You're not waiting for someone else to come and wake your sexuality up. You're not waiting for somebody else to come and give you the experience you've always wanted. You're not blaming somebody else for what's happened to you. It is self-defined, right? You are the sovereign. A sexually empowered woman is able to make choices for herself. She is able to express consent and maintain boundaries that serve her. This is so important. Consent and boundaries. Again, we are not taught this stuff. I had no clue about this stuff. And of course, I grew up in a family where my boundaries were overridden all the time by mother and father, all the time, constantly overriding my boundaries, constantly projecting onto me a load of bullshit that wasn't true. That's why I'm very hypersensitive to people projecting onto me now, because I grew up in a family where my parents projected onto me all the time and overrode my boundaries all the time. I had no idea that what they were doing was inappropriate. There's such a thing called emotional incest, actually, and I would say that's what I experienced. Yeah, reading glasses. I'm actually completely short-sighted, so I wear contact lenses, and these are my reading glasses. Consent, like, okay, to give consent, you've got to be in your body, because consent comes from the body. It comes, the yes and the no that comes from you sensing yourself in that moment. What's my body saying? What's my body telling me? Is it a yes or is it no? And then it comes from being able to voice no. And I know from my own experience individually, but also from teaching Tantra for 12 years, 10 years, 12 years, from teaching Tantra and teaching women for 20 years, I know a lot of women do not. They can be very bold, articulate, powerful, successful in the business world, in their careers, you know, in other arenas. But when it comes to sex and relating, all of a sudden, it's like, can't speak, can't say no, can't say what they want, can't say stop. No, I don't want this, I don't like this. No. Boundaries and consent, because if there's any kind of fear of rejection, we tend to override the body's no, override the body's maybe. And because there's this conditioning of separation, body and mind, and most people are disconnected from their bodies, they're not able to sense. It's numb, it's dissociated, it's disconnected. But when you're numb, disconnected and dissociated, or split off from your body, you can't know. So being here in the body is fundamental to owning your boundaries and giving consent. Yes or no. And that yes or no can change. You have the right to change your boundaries at any point in time that you choose. It can be yes and then it can be no. It can be maybe and then it can change again. That is your right. Never ever let yourself be shamed or manipulated or pushed away from that empowered place of holding your boundaries for you. A learning to cultivate those. I had no boundaries, didn't even know what they were. When I did this practice in one of my first ever Tantra workshops as a participant, and we did a practice on boundaries, it was so mind-blowing. So mind-blowing. I got to say yes, no, maybe, no, maybe, yes, whenever I wanted to. And it was so empowering and liberating and true and connecting and authentic. And it didn't always please the man. Sometimes he took it really personally and got pissed off. But the thing is, that wasn't my responsibility. If you're worrying about the impact of your no on him, that's codependent. You shouldn't be worrying about him. You should be concerned about what's right for you, what's safe for you, what's good for you, what is your yes and your no. And always, always, always honor. Otherwise, you are abandoning yourself and regressing to a childlike behavior. And again, no judgment here. It's just because I've done it myself, so I can say it. I've done it myself, so I can say. So she's able to express consent and maintain boundaries that serve her. She can ask for what she wants. What do you want? What do you need? She can ask for what she wants. I always have told my kids, 18 and 21 now, if you can't have this kind of conversation with a guy or a girl, then you shouldn't be having sex with them. If you can't say yes and no, if you can't say stop or I like this or I don't like this, you shouldn't be having sex with them if you're not on that level of communication with them and trust and safety. She becomes self-referential, meaning she trusts her own experience and intelligence over external messages. You trust your own experience and intelligence over external messages. And as you go on this path, I'm going to tell you there's going to be a lot of external messages that make you question, because this path of sexual and spiritual awakening goes against the norm. It goes against the grain for many people. It's threatening to many people. They don't understand it. They'll project all kinds of things onto it that aren't the case. You will be questioned, and probably be moved to question yourself. Your partners will question you. They will try to shame you, to make you doubt yourself. They'll try to pressure you. They'll try to push you. They'll say all kinds of things when in response. Or maybe they won't. But you have to trust your own experience and your own intelligence over external messages from the media, from your parents, from your family, from your church, yep, from culture, from your friends, from your peer group, from your partner. The only thing that counts as a sovereign sexual woman is your intelligence, your discernment, your sensing, your knowing, your wisdom. Okay. So sovereignty, somebody posted onto my page the other day, oh, why do you use the word sovereignty? Doesn't that make you superior to somebody or place you above somebody? And I was like, oh, I'd never really thought about it in those terms. I simply use it in the sense of I'm taking full responsibility for myself, for my body, for my sexual experience, for my relational experience. I'm taking full responsibility. I understand that my body, my energy, my sexuality is my responsibility and it's my queendom. So I'm the queen. I sit on my throne and I govern myself and my realm in the best way possible, with the most compassion possible. But, you know, being a queen is a responsibility. You're responsible for your emotions. You're responsible for your psyche. You're responsible for your healing. Where there's something going wrong, you're responsible for it. And you look to ways to address that, just as you would in your queendom, right? And of course, if you want to call in a king, then you need to be the queen of your own domain, of your own realm. So there's a lot, just seeing what that says. Oh yeah, there's a lot that might look like sovereignty out there that isn't really. So, having a lot of flesh on display or not has got nothing to do with sovereignty. How much sex you have or not has got nothing to do with sovereignty. It's not about those external factors. It's about being conscious, being aware, being self-referential, and seeing, owning your shadow and your light fully. Owning your shadow and your light fully, owning your desire fully. Keeping the locus of power here with you rather than giving it away. When do you give your power away? Notice. When do you make somebody else responsible? Notice. It's all information. All of us will have particular triggers, right? Born from those conditions I spoke about earlier, where we tend to go unconscious because of past experience with our family or with our lovers in past relationships. There will be particular triggers where we go unconscious and where we tend to give our power away. There's nothing wrong or bad about that. Just notice, begin to notice more and more and more. The more you begin to hold your boundaries, the more you begin to voice your wants, the more you begin to really live and speak your truth, the more empowered you will feel. And yes, it's edgy and it doesn't always feel comfortable. It will feel weird at first. The very common shadows that women are acting out in the world around this realm are the virgin whore split. So we go one of two ways, or we go both at different times. But those is the shadow dynamic. So, you know, either we are sexual energy, playing with our sexual energy, enticing, seducing, you know, getting freebies. That's not a clear and direct and honest expression of sexual energy. Seducing, trading, commodifying, selling with our body, with our sexual energy, right? Shadow expression. On the other hand, and like the post I wrote the other day about the femme fatale, you know, take a look at Love Island. There's a woman there who's playing the femme fatale role perfectly right now. You know, seducing, hunting, seducing, being dishonest, manipulating. It's going to come around to bite her in the end, though. And the other side of that is the virgin. Oh, that's naughty. Oh, that's sinful. oh, I've got to be a good girl, oh, I couldn't possibly do that, you know, oh, look. And then that kind of feeds into the third part of this, the women's union, where we judge, critique, and take down other women. Oh, look at her, look what she's doing, look what she's wearing, she's too old for that, she's too young for that, her tits are big, her bum's fat, you know, like, that's the women's union. That is you reproducing patriarchy in your thoughts, words, and actions, basically. Because when we are embodying Shakti, when we are in the field of the divine feminine, when we are illuminating our shadows, there is no way we would compete with any other woman. We don't think like that. There's no way we judge ourselves. There's no way we look at ourselves and find ourselves lacking. Shakti doesn't do that. No. So, the Virgin Horse split is an archetypal shadow frame of patriarchy, and that will be overlaid with our very particular circumstances, our very personal wounds about the body, about the sexuality, and all of that. So the feminine body really is the locus of the personal and the political. Right, I'm going to wrap up. I don't know what the time is. Yeah, oh my gosh, I've been going for almost an hour. Right. Final piece here is, why should you care? It's a good question. Why should you care? You don't have to care. I don't need to make you care. So why should you care? Well, in my own case, and you know, like, I'm not referring to my own case out of self-importance, but just because I think it's really helpful to give concrete examples, and I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to give my own examples, you know. I got to a place where I'd had so many rounds of suffering, so many rounds of unconscious behavior, so many things I couldn't explain, where I was basically kind of saying, why is this happening to me? Why does this keep happening? Why is he doing this? Right? Those were the questions I was asking. Why is this happening? I don't want this anymore. I want to be free from this pain, from this heartache. I want to be able to have great sex again, which I did, by the way. It wasn't too long, after 4.5 years. Yay. You know, it was great. I'm not prepared to live small. I'm more willing to go through whatever it takes that I have to go through to grow, to learn, to heal, to become more, to be free. So that's the point I got to. So maybe you're at that point, or you've been at that point personally, but also it can be more broadly in terms of your personal freedom, your personal choice, your personal pleasure, your personal empowerment, because all of these layers of conditioning are going to limit you in, not just in your sexual life and your relating life, but in your life as a whole, because it's all connected. It's not separate. How you show up in the world as you're in a woman's body, so how you show up as you is intimately connected with your relationship with your body and your sexuality and your sexual energy. And so that's going to impact everything. Your work life, your family relationships, your parenting, everything. It's all connected. Your health, your vitality or not, it's all connected. Your mental state, it's all connected. So why should you care? You want more? You want more freedom. You want more liberation? You want more choice. You want a choice. You want to stop being a victim. You want more pleasure. You want to stand in your sovereignty. You want an end to suffering, not just for you, but for everybody around you. Because, coming back to that quote that I used at the start, where is it? Our unexamined assumptions have unintended consequences. I hurt people through my unconscious actions. I hurt people. I feel really sorry that I did that now. Those actions came from being unconscious. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I did the best I could do, but I hurt people. And I've been hurt badly. You know, so an end to suffering, an end to karma, creating the new world. Like, we want to live in a new world that is peaceful, loving, and harmonious, don't we? So taking full responsibility for your experience is fundamental to that. And how you relate and how you make love or create more karma and drama is a huge part of that. I totally believe that if every man and woman was including sacred sexuality or tantric practice within their lives, for themselves and in their relationships, there could not be any war. There could not be war. It just wouldn't be possible. So when we make love consciously, we are actually making love in the world. We're actually making love. And otherwise, we are making more suffering, making more conflict, making more karma. You know, you can choose. All of us have hurt people. Let's just own that, okay? All of us have. So, yeah, it's like rewriting the script of patriarchy. You know, we're in this time of great awakening, of transitioning, and bringing awareness and consciousness to our body, to our feminine, to our masculine, to our sexuality is a key part of this shift. And it starts with us taking responsibility. I don't know about you, but my video is looking kind of weird. I don't know if the heat's affecting it or something. What does that say? Oh yeah. This can involve, in fact it will involve, going through some discomfort. So this awakening process, claiming your sovereignty process, is not going to be without discomfort. So come ready for that. Kind of discomfort I would prefer, personally. And again, the more we cultivate our awareness, the more everything is welcome into that sea and that field of awareness. And we meet it. And that's basically the path of integration, the path of awakening. We meet everything that arises, we return it to the heart, we return it to the source. And we integrate and we grow, we integrate and we expand, we integrate and we become who we are here to be as one with God. Really and truly, yes, this is a choice. You step onto this path and you say, yes, this is what I want. And also, if wherever you are engaging in practices of Shakti embodiment, it's inevitable. Actually, once you're on the path, it's not going to stop. She, the energy of the divine feminine Shakti, is an awakening energy. She will highlight for you your traumas, your shadows, your wounds, your patterns. She will show them to you. Your lived experience will show it to you. She will show them. And because she is the current of love and truth, there's no avoiding anymore. She is the current of love and truth. Ultimate power. With this energy within you, the more you embody that power, that love, that truth, the more you begin to see everything you've been told is a lie. Your age, your looks, your body, your shape, all that external narrative is a distraction that is meaningless. You embodying her, stand in your power, stand in your sensuality, stand in your groundedness, stand in your yes and no with absolute clarity, ferocity. Nothing to do with age, nothing to do with shape, nothing to do with color, nothing to do with size, nothing to do with what anybody else outside you says or thinks or does. Nothing. It's within. That's the path. Okay, so that's my sharing on sovereignty complete for today. I hope this has been illuminating, inspiring. I hope it's fired you up in some way, maybe provoked some thought or some questions. It's all welcome. Please post your questions, please post your shares, please post your reflections. And of course, if you are called, then there are still a few places on my retreat, which is tomorrow and Sunday, 18th and 19th of June 2022, the Sovereign Sexual Woman Retreat, where we're going to be exploring all of this deeply. Beautiful, empowering. I can't wait. So reach out if you want to know more. There's still time to join us. And if you want to work with me one-on-one around these kinds of issues, then also, reach out and we can have a chat. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for honoring yourself. Loads of love, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.